A millionaire kidnappee found in the pigsty by a young man with his children, and fate changes. Michael Carter never imagined his life would change completely on that cold June morning when he went out early to look for dry firewood to heat the small house where he lived with his 2 children. Winter had arrived with force in the Kentucky countryside, and he needed to keep 8-year-old Emily and 6-year-old Ryan warm before they woke up for another day without school because of the teachers' strike. It was then that he heard the low moans coming from the old abandoned pigsty at the back of the property that he himself had left behind when the money ran out. The sound was faint, almost muffled by the cold morning wind, but unmistakable. Someone was inside, and by the tone of the moans, it seemed to be a woman in a desperate situation. Michael stopped where he was, the bundle of firewood falling from his trembling hands. His first instinct was to run back home and pretend he hadn't heard anything. In the last 2 years, since Jessica left him alone with the children to follow a job offer in New York, he had learned that getting involved in other people's troubles only brought complications to those who already had enough problems. But the moans continued, and something inside him couldn't ignore the suffering of others. He walked slowly toward the pigsty, stepping carefully on the dry branches scattered on the ground so as not to make noise. When he approached the half-destroyed entrance, his heart almost stopped. A woman was curled up in the darkest corner of the abandoned structure, shivering violently. Her clothes, which must once have been elegant and expensive, were now torn and dirty with dirt and mud. Her blonde hair, tangled and full of dry leaves, partially covered a face that mixed beauty and despair. She couldn't be more than 35, but the terror in her eyes made her look much younger and more vulnerable. "Please," she whispered when she noticed Michael's presence, "don't take me back. Please, I beg you." Michael stood motionless for a few seconds, not knowing how to react. The woman's voice was polite, with an accent that betrayed a refined education, very different from what he was used to hearing in the rural area where he lived. But there was something more, a genuine desperation that touched his heart, as a single father who knew abandonment well. "Ma'am, what are you doing here?" he asked cautiously, keeping some distance. "Are you hurt?" The woman raised her face, and Michael could see she had been crying a lot. Her blue eyes were swollen and red, but there was an intelligence there that couldn't be erased even by the terror she obviously felt. "I ran away," she said, her voice breaking. "I ran away from home 3 days ago. My family, they want to commit me to a psychiatric clinic. They say I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. I discovered things, irregularities in the company, and now they want to silence me." Michael slowly crouched down, keeping his hands visible so as not to scare her even more. During his years of marriage to Jessica, he had learned to recognize true desperation, and there was something in the way this woman spoke that convinced him she wasn't lying. "What kind of irregularities?" he asked softly. "I own Jennifer's Foods. It's a large food distribution company in the state," she explained, wiping her eyes with the back of her dirty hand. "My name is Jennifer Williams. My sister Rebecca and my brother-in-law Brandon have worked with me for years, handling the administrative side while I take care of production. But I discovered they are embezzling money, falsifying reports, using the company to launder money from other activities." Michael knew the company's name. Jennifer's Food supplied several markets in the region, and he himself had worked on some deliveries for them before losing his job at the gas station. If this woman was telling the truth, she was indeed very wealthy, which made her presence in that abandoned place even stranger. "When I confronted Rebecca with the evidence," continued Jennifer, "she said I was becoming paranoid, that I was working too much and needed to rest. The next day, a doctor showed up at my house saying she had called because she was worried about my behavior. They wanted to give me medication, talk about voluntary hospitalization for my own good." "And then you ran away?" asked Michael. "At the first opportunity," she confirmed. "I took only the clothes on my back and left. I couldn't use cards, couldn't access bank accounts, because Rebecca had already convinced everyone I was having a nervous breakdown. I walked along the road for 2 whole days, sleeping where I could until I arrived here and found this place." Michael looked around the abandoned pigsty. It truly wasn't a place someone would choose to stay by their own will. The walls had holes, the roof was partially collapsed, and the smell of dampness and mold was almost unbearable. For someone accustomed to luxury, that place must have been a nightmare, but Jennifer seemed to prefer it to what she had left behind. "Listen," said Michael after a moment of reflection, "you can't stay here. It's too cold, and it's going to rain heavily tonight. Come with me to my house, at least until we decide what to do." Jennifer recoiled, fear returning to her eyes. "Are you going to turn me into them? I'm sure they're offering a reward. People like me don't disappear without someone looking." "I'm not turning anyone in," Michael assured her, extending a hand to help her up. "Not without properly understanding what's happening. But here you'll end up getting really sick." Jennifer hesitated for a long moment before accepting the outstretched hand. When she tried to stand, her legs gave way and she almost fell. Michael held her by the arms, noticing how weak she was. "When was the last time you ate anything?" he asked. "Yesterday morning I found some fruit on a tree," she admitted. "I have no money, and I can't show up anywhere I might be recognized." Michael sighed deeply. He barely had enough food for himself and his children, but he couldn't let a person go hungry like that. Besides, there was something in Jennifer's story that touched him deeply. He too knew what it was like to be betrayed by people who were supposed to protect him. "Let's walk," he said, putting his arm around her shoulders to support her. "But there's one thing. I have 2 young children at home, and I can't involve them in this until I'm sure you won't bring trouble to us." "I understand," murmured Jennifer. "You have every right to be cautious." They walked slowly toward the house, Michael carrying the firewood with one arm and supporting Jennifer with the other. She stumbled with every step, clearly exhausted and weakened by lack of food and the stress of the past few days. Michael's house was simple but clean, with 2 small bedrooms, a living room that also served as a kitchen, and a tiny bathroom. There was no luxury, but there was love in the little things. Children's drawings stuck on the refrigerator, toys organized in a corner, clean clothes hanging on the makeshift clothesline on the porch. "Stay here in the living room for now," said Michael, helping Jennifer sit on the house's only sofa. "I'll prepare something for you to eat and think about how to explain your presence to the children." "Thank you," said Jennifer, and for the first time since Michael found her, she managed something resembling a smile. "I don't know how to thank you for your kindness." "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "First, let's see if we can resolve this situation without anyone getting hurt." Michael went to the kitchen to prepare something simple for Jennifer to eat. He only had eggs, a bit of rice from the day before, and some fruit he had bought at the weekend farmer's market. It wasn't much, but it would be enough for her to regain her strength. As he cooked, his mind worked intensely. If Jennifer was telling the truth, she really was in danger. But if she was lying, or if she really did have mental problems as her family claimed, he would be putting Emily and Ryan at risk by sheltering her. He decided that for now he would keep the children away, at least until he understood the situation better. They were sleeping in the back bedroom, and with luck would keep sleeping for a few more hours. When he returned to the living room with the plate of food, he found Jennifer looking at a photo on the coffee table. It was a family photo, taken at Emily's last birthday before Jessica left. "Your children are beautiful," she commented, returning the photo to its place. "Where is their mother?" "She left 2 years ago," Michael answered simply, handing her the plate. "Decided family life wasn't for her." Jennifer began to eat slowly, clearly hungry but trying not to seem desperate. Michael took advantage of the moment of silence to observe her better. Even dirty and in torn clothes, it was possible to see she was a woman used to care. Her nails, though dirty, were well manicured. Her teeth were perfect, betraying expensive dental work. Even her posture, despite her exhaustion, maintained a certain elegance. "Can I ask a question?" Michael said after a while. "Of course. If you really are the owner of a large company, why didn't you seek legal help? A lawyer? The courts? Some authority?" Jennifer stopped eating and sighed deeply. "Because Rebecca was very clever. For months she was planting seeds, making comments about my behavior to employees, clients, even to our lawyers. She said I was getting stressed, making erratic decisions, having sudden mood swings. When I finally discovered the irregularities and confronted her, she had already prepared the ground. Everyone believed I really was having some kind of crisis." "And the proof of the irregularities?" It's in my home office in a safe whose combination only I know, she said, finishing the last forkful of rice. But I can't get near there. I'm sure Rebecca has security guards watching for me. Michael shook his head. The situation was truly complicated. If Jennifer was telling the truth, she was in an almost perfect trap. Without access to money, discredited by her own family, and without proof to back up her claims. Look, Jennifer, he said finally, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if your story is true, but I'll give you a chance. You can stay here a few days until we figure this out, but I can't involve my children until I'm sure you're not a danger. How do you want to do that? She asked. There's a small room at the back of the house where I used to keep tools before I sold most of them. You can stay there during the day, when the kids are awake. At night, when they're sleeping, you can use the bathroom and eat something in the kitchen. Jennifer nodded understandingly. I'm grateful for any help. I know it's not fair to ask this of a stranger. We all need help sometimes, said Michael, picking up the empty plate. Now come on, I'll show you where you'll stay. The little room was indeed small, little bigger than a closet, but it had a small window that looked out onto the backyard, and it was clean. Michael improvised a bed with some blankets and brought an old pillow. It's not very comfortable, he apologized. It's better than the pigsty, Jennifer replied with a sad smile, and infinitely better than a psychiatric clinic. Try to get some rest, said Michael. The kids will wake up soon, and then you'll have to stay very quiet. Jennifer lay down on the blankets and closed her eyes, clearly exhausted. Michael watched her for a moment, noting how fragile and vulnerable she seemed, so different from the image of a powerful businesswoman she claimed to be. He returned to the kitchen thoughtful. For the first time in a long while, he felt something bigger than his own worries occupying his mind. During his 2 years as a single father, his life had been reduced to a simple routine, taking care of the children, looking for work, trying to make the money last until the end of the month. Now, suddenly, he found himself in the middle of a situation that could change everything. The children woke up about an hour later, as they always did when they smelled food coming from the kitchen. Emily appeared first, with her brown hair disheveled and still wearing the princess pajamas she got for Christmas. "Good morning, Daddy," she said, giving him a tight hug. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" "I had a strange dream," she told him, sitting at the kitchen table. "I dreamed we had a woman hidden in our house." Michael almost dropped the pan from his hands. Could Emily have heard something? "What a funny dream," he said, trying to keep his voice natural. "What else happened in the dream?" "The woman was sad and needed help. And you helped her, Daddy, like you always do for everyone." Ryan appeared at that moment, even sleepier than his sister, dragging his favorite teddy bear. "Good morning, Daddy," he murmured, climbing onto a chair. "Good morning, champ. How about some pancakes for breakfast?" The children got excited at the prospect of pancakes, which had been a rarity in the house since money had gotten tight. Michael prepared the simple batter, making as much noise as possible to disguise any sound that might come from the small back room. During breakfast, the children chatted excitedly about their plans for the day. The teachers' strike was still on, so they had no school, and Michael needed to find a way to keep them occupied without them discovering Jennifer's presence. "How about we tidy up the yard today?" he suggested. "We can plant some seeds I bought last week." "Can I help dig the dirt?" asked Ryan, excited. "Of course, but let's only work in the front, okay? The back is too messy." Emily, always more observant, slightly furrowed her brow. "Why can't we go in the back, Daddy? We always play there." Because there are some dangerous holes back there. I don't want you to get hurt." The explanation seemed to satisfy the children, and they finished breakfast talking about the plants that could grow in the yard. Michael took a moment when they went to brush their teeth to discreetly bring a glass of water and some crackers to Jennifer. When he opened the door to the small room, he found her awake, sitting on the floor looking out the small window. She had managed to clean her face a bit and fix her hair, looking a little better. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Better. I managed to sleep a few hours," she replied, accepting the glass of water. "Your children seem lovely. I heard them talking." "They're all I have," said Michael. "That's why I need to be sure I won't put them in danger." "I understand perfectly. If I had children, I'd do the same thing." "You don't have children?" Jennifer shook her head sadly. "I always wanted them, But I never found someone who really wanted to build a family with me. Most of the men who approached me were more interested in my bank account than in me. There was a melancholy in her voice that touched Michael deeply. He knew the feeling of being alone all too well, even when surrounded by people. Well, for now you need to stay here quietly. I'll try to keep the kids busy away from this part of the house. Thank you, Michael. Really, I don't know how I'll repay so much kindness. Don't worry about that now, he said. First, let's sort out your situation. Michael returned to the main room, where the children were already ready to start working in the backyard. They spent the entire morning digging dirt and planting tomato, lettuce, and carrot seeds. The kids had a lot of fun, and Michael managed to keep them away from the back of the house without raising much suspicion. During lunch, however, Emily made an observation that made him nervous. "Daddy, you're different today." "Different how?" "I don't know, more worried. And you keep looking toward the back of the house." Michael forced a smile. "I'm just thinking about some repairs I need to do back there." Ryan, who was more interested in the food than the conversation, didn't pay attention. But Emily continued to watch her father with her big, intelligent eyes. In the afternoon, Michael suggested they watch some cartoons on TV, an activity normally restricted to weekends because of the electricity bill. The children were so excited that they settled on the sofa and completely forgot about the world around them. Seizing the moment, Michael managed to bring a plate of food to Jennifer without being noticed. She ate with appetite, clearly feeling stronger. "I need to ask a difficult question," he said after she finished eating. "Go ahead. If your story is true, your family must be looking for you desperately, not out of concern but because you're a threat to their plans. How long do you think we have before they get here?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "Rebecca knows the area well because we make deliveries around here, but I don't think she would imagine I'd come to such a remote place. She's probably searching in the bigger cities, in hotels, bus stations. We might have a few days before they expand the search." "And what do you plan to do in that time?" "I need to recover the documents that prove the irregularities. Without them, it's my word against theirs, and you already know who will be believed." "How do you plan to do that? You said yourself you can't get near your house." Jennifer sighed deeply. "I don't know yet. I'm thinking maybe during the night when there's less activity, or maybe I can convince some company employee to help me. It's very risky. I know, but it's the only way to prove I'm telling the truth." Michael was silent for a few minutes, absorbing the information. Part of him wanted to believe Jennifer, but the responsible part, the part that needed to protect Emily and Ryan, still had doubts. "Listen," he finally said, "I'll make a proposal. Tomorrow, when the kids are asleep, we'll go to your house. I'll go with you to recover those documents. If we succeed, and if they really prove what you're saying, then I'll help you for real. But if anything goes wrong, if I find out you're not being sincere, you'll turn me over to my family," she completed. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my children," Michael confirmed, without hesitation in his voice. "That's fair," agreed Jennifer. "And if the roles were reversed, I'd do exactly the same thing." The rest of the day passed quietly. The children played, had dinner, and went to bed at the usual time. Michael waited until he was absolutely sure they were sound asleep before going to get Jennifer. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I think so," she replied, clearly nervous. "It's been 3 days since I've seen my house. I don't even know what story Rebecca made up to explain my disappearance." They went out the back door and walked to Michael's old pickup truck. The car was in terrible shape, but it still ran well enough for the necessary trips. On the way into the city, Jennifer gave directions to Michael. The house was in an upscale neighborhood with large houses and well-kept gardens. When they reached her street, Michael had to admit he was impressed. The house was truly imposing, with an ornate iron gate and a garden that must have cost a fortune to maintain. "Stop here," said Jennifer, when they were still a block away. "We'll go on foot." They got out of the car and walked cautiously down the quiet street. There were a few streetlights, but most of the way was plunged in darkness. As they approached Jennifer's house, she pointed to a lit window on the second floor. "That's Rebecca's room," she whispered. "She must still be awake. She's always been an insomniac. How do we get in?" There's a back door I always leave unlocked. It's where the housekeeper enters when she arrives before me. They carefully went around the house, staying in the shadows. The backyard garden was even more impressive than the front, with fruit trees, flower beds, and even a small pool. The back door was indeed unlocked. Jennifer opened it slowly, careful not to make a noise. The inside of the house was elegant and well decorated, but it had a cold air that contrasted with the welcoming simplicity of Michael's house. "The office is on the first floor," whispered Jennifer, pointing to a staircase. "The documents are in a safe behind a painting." They climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to make a deafening noise in the quiet of the house. On the first floor, Jennifer opened a heavy door leading to a spacious office with shelves full of books and an imposing dark wood desk. "It's there," she said, pointing to a painting on the wall. Michael stood guard at the door while Jennifer went to the painting. It was an expensive piece, showing a rural landscape that vaguely reminded him of the region where he lived. She moved the painting carefully, revealing a small but sophisticated safe. Jennifer typed a sequence of numbers into the electronic panel. The safe opened with a soft click, and she took out a brown leather folder full of documents. "I got it," she whispered, clearly relieved. It was at that moment they heard footsteps from the floor above. "Jennifer," called a woman's voice. "Jennifer, is that you?" "Rebecca," murmured Jennifer, turning pale. "She heard me." The footsteps began coming down the stairs quickly. Michael grabbed Jennifer by the arm and pulled her toward the back door. "Let's go, now." They ran through the house, and Michael could hear Rebecca shouting behind them. "Brandon! Brandon, wake up! She's here! Jennifer is here!" They managed to get out the back door and ran through the garden toward the street. Michael could hear more voices coming from the house, and lights came on in several windows. Clearly there were more people in the house besides Rebecca. They reached the car breathlessly, and Michael hurriedly started the engine. The car coughed a few times before catching, and during those tense seconds, Michael saw a burly man run out of the house toward them. "That's Brandon," said Jennifer, clutching the folder to her chest. The car finally started, and Michael slammed on the accelerator. They sped out of the street, and only when they were far from the upscale neighborhood did they stop to catch their breath. "We did it," said Jennifer, still in disbelief. "We really did it." "What's in these documents?" asked Michael, stopping at a closed gas station so they could better examine the contents of the folder. Jennifer opened the folder and took out several papers. Even in the dim light of the station, Michael could see they were official documents with stamps and signatures. "They're fake contracts," she explained. "Rebecca created shell companies that supposedly supplied ingredients for our production. But these companies don't really exist. The money we paid them went straight to bank accounts controlled by Rebecca and Brandon." Michael examined some of the documents. Even without understanding much about business matters, he could see there were obvious inconsistencies. Company names that repeated with slight variations, addresses that made no sense, amounts that seemed excessive. "Is this enough proof?" he asked. "It should be. With these documents, any accountant can trace the diverted money. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over 2 years. So now we just need to find a lawyer." Jennifer shook her head. "It won't be that simple. Rebecca will try to discredit these documents, say that I forged them during my supposed nervous breakdown. It will be her word against mine, and she's spent months preparing everyone to believe her." Michael sighed. Even with the evidence in hand, the situation was still complicated. "Let's go back home," he said. "Tomorrow we'll think better about what to do." During the drive back, both were silent, absorbed in their own thoughts. Michael felt he had crossed a line. He was no longer just sheltering a stranger. He was actively helping her in a situation that could bring serious consequences. When they got home, it was past 2 in the morning. The children were still sleeping soundly. Michael accompanied Jennifer to the small back room and waited for her to get settled. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know you're risking a lot for someone you barely know." "Everyone deserves a chance to defend themselves," he replied. "Rest now. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to use these documents." Michael returned to his room but couldn't sleep. He lay staring at the ceiling, thinking of all the ways this situation could go wrong. If Jennifer were lying, if Rebecca really were the victim of a trap, if the children ended up being harmed by his decisions. But there was something in Jennifer's attitude that convinced him of her sincerity. The way she interacted with the children when she thought he wasn't looking, the genuine gratitude in her eyes, the way she asked for nothing more than a safe place to stay. It didn't seem like the behavior of someone trying to deceive him. The next morning, Michael woke up later than usual. The children were already awake and playing in the living room when he came out of his room. Emily immediately noticed he looked tired. "Did you sleep badly, Daddy?" "I was just thinking about some things," he replied, heading to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. While making the pancakes, Michael heard Emily talking to Ryan about strange dreams. "I dreamed about that woman again," she was saying. This time she was crying because she had lost something very important. "What woman?" asked Ryan, uninterested. "A pretty woman who needed help." "Daddy, do you think dreams can be real?" Michael almost dropped the batter from the bowl. Emily had an impressive intuition for an 8-year-old. Was she really dreaming, or was there some way she was sensing Jennifer's presence? "Dreams are just dreams, sweetheart," he said, trying to keep his voice natural. "Our mind makes up stories while we sleep." "But this dream feels very real," insisted Emily. "The woman has blonde hair and blue eyes, and she looks very sad." Michael swallowed hard. That description was too accurate to be a coincidence. "How about we stop talking about dreams and focus on breakfast?" he suggested, serving the pancakes. Emily agreed, but Michael noticed she remained thoughtful during the meal. She was a child too smart for her own safety, and he knew he wouldn't be able to hide the situation for much longer. After breakfast, Michael suggested the kids watch television while he tidied up a few things in the back of the house. He managed to bring breakfast to Jennifer without being noticed. "How was your night?" he asked. "Much better than the previous ones," she replied, looking truly rested. "And you? It looks like you didn't sleep much." "I was thinking about what to do with these documents. Do you know any trustworthy attorney who isn't connected to your family?" "I knew a few, but I don't know if I can trust them now. Rebecca could have convinced anyone that I have mental problems." "Then you need to find someone who doesn't know her, but who is competent enough to handle a case like this." Jennifer was thoughtful for a few minutes. "There's one thing that might help," she finally said. "When I started suspecting the irregularities, I sent copies of some documents to an accountant who works independently in Louisville. If we can speak with him, he can confirm that I'm not making anything up." "What's his name?" "David Robert Thompson. He has a small office downtown. He's always been very honest and has no connections to influential people that Rebecca could have convinced." Michael nodded. Louisville was a few hours' drive away, but it was a viable option. "I'll call him today," Michael decided. "If he confirms your version, then we look for an attorney." "There's something else," said Jennifer hesitantly. "Last night when Rebecca saw me, she yelled for Brandon. That means they're going to intensify the search. Maybe it's better if I leave here before I bring trouble to you and the children." "Let's not make hasty decisions," replied Michael. "First, let's talk to this accountant. Depending on what he says, we decide the next step." Michael returned to the living room, where he found the children watching cartoons, but Emily was clearly distracted. She kept looking toward the back of the house, as if she knew there was something there. During lunch, she made another observation that made Michael even more nervous. "Daddy, did you go out last night?" "Why are you asking that?" "Because when I woke up to get a drink of water, I saw your room was empty, and I heard a car noise." Michael forced a smile. "I had to go out quickly to take care of something. You must have dreamed you heard a car." "It wasn't a dream," insisted Emily. "I'm sure I heard it." Ryan, who was more interested in playing with his food than talking, didn't pay attention to the discussion. But Emily kept watching her father with her intelligent, suspicious eyes. After lunch, Michael managed to get a moment of privacy to call the accountant in Louisville. He used the neighbor's phone, Mrs. Dorothy, a widowed lady who had always been kind to him and the children. "Hello, David Thompson's office," answered a male voice. "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with Mr. David Thompson. It's regarding a case involving the company Jennifer's Foods. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Who is speaking? Asked the voice, now more cautious. My name is Michael Carter. I'm calling at the request of Mrs. Jennifer Williams. Jennifer? But where is she? People have been looking for her for days, saying she has mental problems. Michael felt his heart race. The accountant's reaction confirmed Jennifer's version. She is well and has no mental problems. Can I speak with you in person? It's about the documents she sent you a few weeks ago. Of course you can. In fact, I was worried about her. The documents she sent really show serious irregularities. When can you come here? I can still come today, if possible. Of course. My office is at 245 Main Street, 10th floor. I can wait for you until about 6 in the evening. Michael thanked him and hung up, feeling more relieved. At least he had confirmed that Jennifer was telling the truth about the irregularities. He returned home and explained the situation to her. Jennifer was visibly emotional upon learning the accountant confirmed her suspicions. So, are we going to Louisville? She asked. I'll go alone first, Michael decided. It's safer. If all goes well, then we'll decide if you go too. But what about the children? You can't leave them alone. I'll ask Mrs. Dorothy to look after them. She always does that when I need to go out. Michael went to talk to the neighbor, who promptly agreed to look after Emily and Ryan for the afternoon. She was a trustworthy lady who had known the children since they were babies. Before leaving, Michael spoke with Emily and Ryan. I'm going out for a few hours to take care of some business. You'll stay with Mrs. Dorothy, and when I come back, we'll make popcorn and watch a movie. How about that? What business, Daddy? Asked Emily. Adult things, sweetheart. Nothing you need to worry about. Emily didn't seem convinced, but didn't insist. Michael kissed her forehead and left for Louisville, leaving Jennifer hidden in the little room with instructions not to leave for any reason. The trip to the state capital took just over 2 hours. Michael wasn't used to driving such long distances, and his old car protested the whole way, but he arrived at his destination without major problems. David Robert Thompson's office was in an old building downtown. It was a small but organized space, with shelves full of files and a simple desk where the accountant, a man of about 50 with thick glasses, received him. So you are helping Jennifer? Asked David, after Michael introduced himself. I'm trying. She showed up at my property a few days ago saying her family wanted to commit her to take control of the company. And it's not a lie, confirmed the accountant, picking up a folder from his desk. These documents she sent me show a well-crafted embezzlement scheme. Shell companies, fake invoices, non-existent contracts. This is the work of people experienced in defrauding systems. David showed several spreadsheets and analyses he had prepared based on the documents Jennifer had sent. By these accounts, they embezzled at least $300,000 in the last 2 years. Maybe more because these are only the most obvious cases. Is that enough proof for a criminal case? It should be, but it will depend on how their defense tries to discredit the evidence. If they manage to convince people that Jennifer has mental problems, they could claim she forged these documents during a breakdown. But can you attest that you received these documents before she disappeared? I can, and I will. I even have the dates of the emails she sent me. It was over 3 weeks ago, long before any story about mental problems. Michael felt more hopeful. With the accountant's testimony, it would be possible to prove that Jennifer had discovered the irregularities before her family started talking about mental instability. Do you know any lawyer who could help with a case like this? Yes, I do. Attorney Sarah Mitchell. She specializes in corporate law and isn't afraid to take on complicated cases. I can call her right now if you want. David called the attorney and briefly explained the situation. After a few minutes of conversation, he hung up and turned to Michael. She can see you tomorrow morning. She said the case seems interesting and that it has a high chance of success if the evidence is really as clear as it seems. Perfect, said Michael. Can I bring Jennifer tomorrow? Yes, you can. And a tip. Bring the original documents she recovered yesterday. It will make a difference for the attorney to see they aren't manipulated copies. Michael thanked him and got ready to leave. It was already getting dark when he left the building, and he wanted to get home before the kids went to bed. During the drive back, he felt more optimistic than he had in days. Finally, there was a concrete plan, competent people willing to help, and enough evidence to support Jennifer's version. When he got home, he found Emily and Ryan watching television at Mrs. Dorothy's house. They ran to hug him as soon as they saw him arrive. "How was your trip, Daddy?" asked Emily. "It was good, sweetheart. I managed to sort out what I needed to." "And now are we making popcorn?" Ryan reminded him. "Of course we are." Michael thanked Mrs. Dorothy and went back home with the children. While making the popcorn, he told Jennifer about his conversation with the accountant. She listened quietly from the small back room. After the kids went to bed, Michael met with Jennifer in the living room to plan the meeting with the attorney. "It seems things are finally moving," she said, clearly relieved. "It's still too early to celebrate," Michael cautioned. "Your family won't give up easily. When they find out you have professional help, they might try to create even more problems." "You're right," agreed Jennifer. "But for the first time in days, I feel I have a real chance to prove my innocence." They talked about the details of the legal strategy late into the night. Jennifer explained more about how the company worked, the family relationships, and how Rebecca had managed to win the trust of employees and business partners. "Rebecca was always very smart," said Jennifer. "Since she was little, she had an impressive knack for convincing people to see things her way. Our mother used to say she'd be a great salesperson when she grew up. And she became a great criminal," Michael remarked. "What makes me saddest is that it didn't have to be this way. The company always made enough profit for everyone to live well. She didn't need to steal." "Maybe it wasn't just about the money," Michael reflected. "Maybe it was about control, about power." Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "You might be right. Rebecca always wanted to be the leader, the person who made the important decisions. Maybe she started to see me as an obstacle." The next morning, Michael woke up early and got everything ready for the trip to Louisville. This time, Jennifer would go with him to meet the attorney. Mrs. Dorothy again offered to look after the children. Before they left, Michael had a serious talk with Emily. "Sweetheart, I'm going out again today, but this time it will take a bit longer. If anything strange happens, if someone you don't know comes here looking for me, you go straight to Mrs. Dorothy's house and call me, okay?" Emily looked at him seriously. "Is something dangerous happening, Daddy?" Michael hesitated. Part of him wanted to protect his daughter's innocence, but another part knew she was too smart to be fooled for long. "I'm helping someone who's in trouble, and those people can sometimes create complicated situations. But I don't want you to worry. I just want you to know what to do if you need to." "Is the person you're helping the woman of my dreams?" Emily asked suddenly. Michael felt his blood run cold. "Why are you asking that?" "Because last night I saw her. It wasn't a dream. She was in the kitchen drinking water, and when she saw me, she signaled for me to be quiet." Michael knelt in front of his daughter, holding her small hands. "Emily, this is very important. Did you tell anyone about this?" "No." "The woman seemed scared, so I didn't even tell Ryan." "You did very well. It's really important that this remains a secret, at least for now." "Is she in danger?" "She is. But we're trying to help her. She looks very sad, Daddy. She's like the women on TV when someone has done something bad to them." Emily's intuition was impressive. Michael hugged her tightly. "You're a very special girl, you know that. Very smart and brave. But I need you to keep it a secret, okay?" "I will. But promise you'll take care of her?" "I promise." Michael kissed Emily's forehead and went to get Jennifer. During the drive to Louisville, he told her about the conversation with his daughter. "She saw you last night?" he asked. "I saw a child in the kitchen, but I thought I was dreaming," admitted Jennifer. "I didn't imagine she was actually awake." "Emily is very observant. She's always been like that since she was little. It's like she has a sixth sense for these things." "And now could she tell someone?" "She won't tell. She understood it's important to keep the secret. But this means we can't hide her from the children anymore. If Emily has already found out, Ryan will figure it out soon too. Maybe that's for the best. I hated having to hide like a criminal." Attorney Sarah Mitchell's office was in a more modern area of Louisville. It was an elegant but not ostentatious space, conveying seriousness and competence. Sarah herself was a woman of about 40, with short hair and a decisive air that inspired confidence. She received them in her private office and listened attentively as Jennifer told her story from the beginning. "David has already explained the financial situation to me," said the attorney after Jennifer finished, "and there really is enough evidence of embezzlement and document forgery. But I'm concerned about the issue of the alleged mental instability." "It's all my sister's invention," insisted Jennifer. "I believe you, but we need to prove it officially. I'll need you to undergo an independent psychiatric evaluation just so we have an official document attesting to your mental sanity." "That's not a problem," agreed Jennifer. "Another thing, we need to act quickly. If your family is really trying to get a court order declaring you incompetent, every day that passes is precious. I'll prepare an injunction today, asking to suspend any attempt at interdiction until the case is judged." Sarah picked up a notepad and began taking notes. "I'll also request a freeze on the accounts of the shell companies identified by David. If we can stop them from moving more money, it will be easier to track what's already been diverted." "How long could this whole process take?" asked Michael. "If all goes well, a few weeks for the injunctive measures, a few months for the main case. But the important thing is that starting today, Jennifer will have legal protection." The attorney explained in detail all the steps that would be taken and which documents would still be needed. At the end of the meeting, Michael felt confident that there was finally a solution in sight. During the drive back, Jennifer was visibly more relaxed. "You know what makes me happiest?" she said. "It's not even the possibility of getting the company back. It's knowing that I'll be able to prove I'm not crazy, that I didn't make anything up." "You never seemed crazy to me," replied Michael. "Desperate, scared, but not crazy. Thank you for believing in me when even I wasn't sure if anyone would believe me." They arrived home in the late afternoon. The children were at Mrs. Dorothy's house playing in the backyard. When they saw their father arrive, they ran to hug him. "Daddy," shouted Ryan, "Mrs. Dorothy made chocolate cake." "That's great, champ. Did you behave well?" "Yes," replied Emily, "and I didn't tell anyone anything." The way she said it, glancing discreetly toward Jennifer, confirmed that she had truly understood the importance of the secret. That night, after the children went to sleep, Michael made a decision. "I think it's time for you to officially meet Emily and Ryan," he said to Jennifer. "Emily already knows you're here, and it's not fair to either of them to keep pretending." "Are you sure? I don't want to cause problems for them." "You won't cause problems, and they deserve to know the truth, at least a version suitable for their age." The next morning, Michael prepared a special breakfast with pancakes, fruit, and fresh juice. When the children woke up and came down to the kitchen, they found Jennifer sitting at the table. "Good morning," she said with a nervous smile. Ryan stood frozen in the doorway, clearly surprised, but Emily just smiled. "Good morning," she replied naturally. "You are the woman of my dreams." "Emily," said Michael. "Ryan, come sit here. I want you to meet Jennifer. She's a very special person who is going through a hard time, and we're helping her for a few days." Ryan approached cautiously and sat next to his father. Emily was more direct and sat on the other side of Jennifer. "Why were you hiding?" asked Emily. "Because there are some bad people who want to do bad things to me," Jennifer explained simply. "But your daddy is helping me fix it. And now you don't have to hide anymore. Not for now. Your daddy thought it would be better for you to meet me properly." Ryan, always shyer than his sister, just watched Jennifer with curiosity, but when she offered to help him cut his pancakes, he accepted with a small smile. During breakfast, Jennifer told stories about the farm where she had grown up, adapting the tales to be interesting for children. Emily and Ryan were fascinated by her stories about farm animals and adventures in nature. "Do you know how to cook?" asked Emily. "Yes, I do. I really like to cook. Daddy doesn't know how to make many things," Ryan commented innocently. "He only knows how to make eggs, rice, and pancakes." "Ryan," Emily scolded, "you can't talk about Daddy like that." "It's okay," laughed Jennifer. "How about I teach you some new recipes?" The children were excited by the idea, and Michael realized his worry that Jennifer might be a problem for his children was completely wrong. On the contrary, she seemed to have a natural way with children. After breakfast, while Emily and Ryan watched television, Michael and Jennifer talked about the next steps. "The attorney should call today with news about the restraining orders," he said. And if she manages to freeze the shell company accounts? Then your sister will know you have professional help. She might try to speed up her plans, or she might try to find you to negotiate something. I think she'll try to find me. Rebecca never liked losing control of any situation. Are you prepared to face her? Now I am. Before I felt alone and helpless. Now I have you all. I have an attorney. I have evidence. I'm not afraid of her anymore. The phone rang around noon. It was Sarah with news. I got the injunction blocking the shell company's accounts, she said, and I also managed to suspend any attempt at interdiction until you undergo the independent psychiatric evaluation. That's great, said Michael, who was listening to the conversation on speakerphone. But there's something else. I got a call from the lawyer representing Rebecca and Brandon. They want to schedule a meeting to try to resolve the situation without going to court. What does that mean? Asked Jennifer. It means they know you have a strong case and want to try to negotiate. It could be a good opportunity to settle everything quickly. Or it could be a trap, Michael warned. That's why the meeting will be at my office, with all the attorneys present. It's a controlled and safe environment. They scheduled the meeting for the next day. Jennifer spent the rest of the day nervous, but also hopeful that she could finally confront Rebecca face to face on equal footing. That evening, while helping the children with dinner, Jennifer seemed more relaxed and natural than Michael had ever seen her. She played with Ryan, helped Emily with a drawing, and told stories that made them both laugh a lot. She's nice, Emily commented when Jennifer left to get more milk from the kitchen. Really nice, Ryan agreed, and she does funny voices in the stories. You liked her? Asked Michael. A lot, they both answered in unison. Michael smiled, feeling a strange and good sensation in his chest. It had been a long time since he'd seen the children so happy and excited. Jennifer's presence had brought a lightness to the house that he didn't even know was missing. On the morning of the meeting, Michael woke up early and found Jennifer already up, having coffee alone in the kitchen. She was visibly nervous. How are you feeling? He asked. Scared, anxious, but also determined. Today, I'll be able to look Rebecca in the eye and say everything I think about what she did. Remember what the attorney said. Stay calm. Let her do most of the talking. Don't rise to provocations. I'll try. But if she starts talking about my supposed madness, then you'll take a deep breath and remember you have documents that prove she's a liar and a thief. Jennifer smiled for the first time that morning. You're right. Today I have what she doesn't. The truth on my side. They left for Louisville after the children went to Mrs. Dorothy's house. During the drive, Michael noticed Jennifer was more tense than in previous days. Do you want to talk about anything? He offered. I'm thinking about something. What if Rebecca actually convinces me that I was wrong about everything? What if she really is innocent and I'm the one making things up? Jennifer, look at me, said Michael, pulling the car over to the shoulder. You have documents that prove the irregularities. You have the accountant who confirmed your suspicions. You have an attorney who believes in your case. You're not making anything up. But Rebecca has always been very convincing. And that's exactly how she managed to set up this scheme. But now you're not facing her alone anymore. You have competent people on your side. Jennifer took a deep breath and nodded. You're right. I can't let her intimidate me like she always has. They arrived at Sarah's office a few minutes before the scheduled time. The attorney greeted them and escorted them to a conference room where Rebecca, Brandon, and their lawyer, an elegant man of about 50, were already waiting. Michael watched Rebecca closely when she saw Jennifer enter the room. For a split second, her face revealed pure anger, but she quickly recomposed herself into an expression of sisterly concern. Jennifer, she exclaimed, rising as if to hug her sister. Thank God you're okay. We've been desperate. Stay where you are, Rebecca, said Jennifer firmly. You are not here to put on a show. A show? Jennifer, dear, you vanished without a word. You left the house in the middle of the night with no money, no documents. How did you think we would feel? Rebecca's lawyer, who introduced himself as Attorney Richard Patterson, intervened in the conversation. Attorney Sarah Mitchell, my clients are genuinely concerned about Miss Jennifer's mental state. Her behavior over the last few weeks has been erratic, paranoid. She has made baseless accusations against her own family, invented conspiracy theories. None of that is true, interrupted Sarah, placing a folder on the table. And we have evidence that proves not only that my client is in perfect mental health, but also that her accusations are completely valid. Sarah opened the folder and took out several documents, including the analyses prepared by David Robert Thompson. These documents show a systematic scheme of embezzlement involving shell companies, fake invoices, and diversion of funds. All of this happening over 2 years, under the direct supervision of Mrs. Rebecca and Mr. Brandon. Attorney Richard examined the documents quickly, and Michael could see his expression change from confident to worried. These documents could have been forged during Miss Jennifer's psychotic break, he argued, but his voice no longer held the same certainty. They were sent to an independent accountant more than 3 weeks ago, replied Sarah. Long before any claims about mental instability, and we have the email dates to prove it. Rebecca, who had until then tried to maintain her composure, began to show signs of nervousness. "Jennifer, you don't know what you're doing," she said. "You are destroying our family, our company, everything our parents built." "Me?" retorted Jennifer, her voice trembling with contained anger. "The one who destroyed everything was you, Rebecca. You and that thief of a husband you chose. You stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from the company, created this elaborate scheme to discredit me when I discovered what you were doing." "You are paranoid," shouted Rebecca, finally losing her composure. "You've always been paranoid, always thought everyone was against you." "That's enough," intervened Sarah calmly. "Attorney Richard, I believe it would be interesting for your clients to consider a settlement proposal. The evidence we have is more than sufficient for a criminal case, in addition to the civil suit." Attorney Richard whispered something into Rebecca and Brandon's ears. Brandon, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. "What kind of agreement do you have in mind?" "Full restitution of the misappropriated funds, with monetary correction and interest. Immediate removal of Mrs. Rebecca from any administrative role in the company. And a public statement acknowledging that all allegations about Miss Jennifer's mental instability were unfounded." "And in return?" asked Attorney Richard. "In return, my client will consider not pressing criminal charges, only the civil suit for recovery of the funds." Rebecca and Brandon whispered with their lawyer for several minutes. Finally, Attorney Richard spoke. "We will need a few hours to evaluate the proposal. Can we give an answer by the end of the day?" "You may," agreed Sarah, "but make it clear to your clients that this is the only proposal we will make. If it is rejected, we will proceed with the full criminal case." The meeting ended with a tense atmosphere. Rebecca left the room without looking at Jennifer, but Michael noticed she directed a look of pure hatred in his direction, as if he were responsible for the whole situation. Outside the building, Jennifer finally broke down. "I did it," she said, beginning to cry. "I finally managed to face her. Finally, she had to listen to me without being able to commit me or medicate me." "You were incredible in there," said Michael, hugging her. "You kept your cool, were firm, but not aggressive. Your attorney was proud, you could tell." "Do you think they'll accept the deal?" "I think they will. Their attorney realized you have a very strong case. Rebecca can be proud, but she's not stupid. She knows it's better to lose the money than go to jail." They had lunch at a restaurant near the office, waiting for Sarah's call with the answer. Jennifer ate with a real appetite for the first time in days, clearly feeling relieved to have finally confronted Rebecca. The call came in the mid-afternoon. "They accepted the deal," said Sarah, "with one small modification. They want to pay the embezzled amounts in installments over 2 years, not in a lump sum." "And do you think we should accept?" asked Jennifer. "I think so. It's better to ensure they'll pay even if it takes a bit longer, and the important thing is that you'll regain full control of the company." "Then it's decided," said Jennifer. "I accept the terms." During the drive back home, Jennifer was radiant. "I can't believe it's over," she said repeatedly. "After everything I've been through, I can't believe it's really over." "And now? Will you go back to your home? Take back the company?" Jennifer was silent for a few minutes, looking out the car window. "You know something? I'm not sure I want to go back to that life." "What do you mean?" These last few days, even with all the fear and uncertainty, were the first in a long time that I've felt truly alive. Cooking for your children, talking with them, helping with little things around the house. I felt useful in a different way. But you have a company to run. I can hire a competent manager to handle the operations. I don't necessarily need to be there every day, micromanaging everything. Michael wasn't quite sure how to respond. There was something in Jennifer's tone of voice that suggested she was thinking about more than just career changes. When they got home, the children ran to greet them excitedly. "How did it go?" asked Emily. "Did you manage to solve Jennifer's problems?" "Yes, we did, sweetheart," answered Michael. "The bad people won't bother her anymore." "That's great," exclaimed Ryan. "Can she stay here forever now?" Ryan's innocent question created an awkward silence among the adults. Jennifer knelt in front of him. "Would you like me to stay?" "Very much. You tell really cool stories, and you promised you'd teach new recipes." "And you, Emily?" asked Jennifer. "I'd like that too," replied Emily. "The house is happier when you're here." That night, after the children went to sleep, Michael and Jennifer talked about the future. "I can't ask you to stay," he said. "That would be selfish of me. You have a life, a company, responsibilities. What if I said I don't want to go back to that life? What if I said these last few days have been the happiest I've had in years? Then I'd say you're being emotional because of everything you've been through, that after a few days of peace you'll miss your old routine. Or maybe I've finally discovered what truly makes me happy." They looked at each other in silence for a long moment. Michael felt a connection with Jennifer that went far beyond compassion for her situation, but he also felt it was too early for this kind of conversation. "Let's do this," he suggested. "You spend a few days readjusting to your old life. If after a while you still feel you want to change, we'll talk again." "That's a fair proposal," agreed Jennifer. The next morning, Sarah called to say the settlement documents were ready for signing. They went back to Louisville one last time to formalize everything. The signing ceremony was brief and formal. Rebecca still tried one last jab. "I hope you'll be happy, Jennifer. But remember, you were always better at destroying things than building them. And you were always better at stealing than working," Jennifer replied calmly. With the documents signed, Jennifer was officially free to regain control of her company and her life. Sarah accompanied her to the bank to reactivate her accounts and cards. During the ride back home, Jennifer seemed thoughtful. "Can I ask a personal question?" she said. "Of course. Have you ever thought about getting married again? Giving a mother to Emily and Ryan?" The question took Michael by surprise. "Sometimes I think about it, but I haven't met anyone who wanted to take on a ready-made family. And I also can't afford to make another mistake. The kids already suffered too much when Jessica left." "I understand. It must be very hard to trust again. And you? Never wanted to have your own family?" "I always wanted to. But when you have money, you never know if people are interested in you or your bank account." They arrived home in the late afternoon. The children greeted them with joy, and Emily asked a question that left both adults speechless. "Now that Jennifer's problems are solved, is she leaving?" "We're still talking about that," Michael replied diplomatically. "But I don't want her to leave," said Ryan with the typical honesty of children. "She's nice and makes the house happier." That night, Jennifer prepared a special dinner to celebrate the resolution of her problems. She cooked chicken with vegetables, made a colorful salad, and even managed to improvise a simple but delicious dessert. During dinner, the children talked animatedly about their plans for the upcoming school holidays. Jennifer joined the conversation as if she were naturally part of the family, suggesting activities and offering help with the children's projects. Michael watched everything with a mixture of happiness and melancholy. It was obvious that Jennifer fit perfectly into the family dynamic, and the children had clearly become attached to her, but he also knew it wasn't fair to expect her to give up her previous life for them. After the children went to sleep, Michael and Jennifer sat on the porch to talk. "I need to go back to my house tomorrow," she said. "I have to reorganize the company, fire the people who were involved with Rebecca, hire new trustworthy employees." "Of course, it's your responsibility. But I wanted you to know that these have been the most special days of my life. For the first time, I felt truly loved and accepted for who I am, not for what I have." "You'll always be welcome here," said Michael. Emily and Ryan have become very attached to you. And you? She asked softly. Have you become attached too? Michael hesitated. All week he had been fighting feelings that grew stronger each day. Seeing her interact with the children, her genuine gratitude, her strength in facing Rebecca, her simplicity despite her wealth, all of it had touched his heart in a way he hadn't expected. Yes, he finally admitted, I've become attached too. Jennifer smiled and took his hand. Then let's do this. I'll spend a week getting everything organized at the company. Then I'll come back here if you'll have me, so we can talk about a future together. And your company? As I said before, I can hire a competent manager. The company doesn't need me physically present every day, and honestly, I've discovered I'd rather cook for 3 people I love than manage 300 employees I barely know. The next morning, Jennifer said goodbye to the children with promises to return soon. Emily hugged her tightly. Do you promise you'll come back? She asked. I promise 1 week at most. And will you bring presents? Asked Ryan with the innocence typical of his age. Maybe, laughed Jennifer. But the best present I can give is coming back to stay with you. Michael took her to her house, which was exactly as she had left it a week before. Jennifer looked around with a strange expression. You know what's funny, she said. This house has everything money can buy, but it has nothing that really matters. It'll all work out, said Michael, hugging her. A week goes by fast. Take care, and Michael, thank you for everything. During the following week, Jennifer called every day to speak with the children. She told them about the progress in reorganizing the company, but she always ended the conversation saying she missed them and could hardly wait to return. Michael, in turn, discovered the house had lost a bit of its joy without Jennifer. The meals were quieter, the nights longer, and the children constantly asked when she would be back. At the end of the week, Jennifer called with news. I hired an excellent manager to handle the company's daily operations, and I've made a decision. I'm going to sell the house and use the money to buy a farm property near you. I want to try a simpler life. Are you sure that's what you want? Asked Michael. More sure than I've ever been about anything in my life. Then come home, he said, smiling. We have a lot to plan. That same afternoon, Jennifer returned. She arrived driving a simple, unassuming car, loaded with some clothes and personal items. The rest of her belongings would be sold with the house. The children ran to hug her as soon as they saw her arrive. You're back, shouted Ryan, jumping into her arms. I'm back to stay, she said, hugging Emily as well. If you'll have me. Of course we will, said Emily. Right, Dad. Michael smiled, feeling a happiness he hadn't experienced in years. Of course we will. That night, after the children went to sleep, Michael and Jennifer talked about their plans. She had found a perfect farm property a few miles from his house, with enough land for a vegetable garden and some animals. I've always wanted a life closer to nature, she said, and now I have the chance to make that dream come true alongside the people I love. It'll be a big change for you. The biggest change already happened when I met you. The rest is just details. A few months later, Jennifer moved to her new property. It was a simple but cozy house, with a large backyard where Emily and Ryan could play freely. She planted a vegetable garden, raised some chickens, and turned the place into a true family refuge. Michael and the children spent every weekend there, and gradually the 2 houses became an extension of each other. The children had 2 bedrooms, 2 kitchens where they could help prepare meals, and twice the space for their games. A year after they met, on a sunny spring morning, Michael asked Jennifer to marry him. The ceremony was simple, held in the backyard of her new house with only a few close friends, Mrs. Dorothy David Robert Thompson and Sarah as guests. Emily was the maid of honor, and Ryan carried the rings. During the ceremony, when the justice of the peace asked if anyone had any objection to the marriage, Ryan raised his hand. I have something to say, he announced solemnly. Everyone laughed, expecting a typical childlike innocence. Is Jennifer our real mom now? He asked. If she wants to be, replied Michael. I want to very much, said Jennifer, kneeling down to be at Ryan and Emily's eye level. Do you want to accept me as your mother? Yes, the 2 replied in unison. And so on a spring morning, 4 people who had met under the most improbable circumstances became officially a family. Dear listener, If you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. Now continuing, the company Jennifer's Foods continued to prosper under the new management. Jennifer maintained a distant supervision, visiting the office once a week, but dedicated most of her time to her family and the rural activities she had learned to love. Rebecca, in turn, had to sell her share of the company to pay her part of the settlement. She and Brandon moved to another state, and Jennifer never heard from them again. She sometimes wondered if they had learned any lesson, but decided it was not her responsibility to worry about it. 2 years after the wedding, Jennifer and Michael had their first daughter together, a girl whom Emily and Ryan welcomed with the same love they had received from Jennifer. The house became even more joyful and noisy, and no one minded it. In the years that followed, the family grew in every way. Jennifer officially adopted Emily and Ryan, who also took her last name. Michael discovered a vocation for farming he never knew he had, and together they turned the property into a small, productive farm. Emily grew up and became a veterinarian, specializing in farm animals. Ryan became an agricultural engineer, helping small local producers improve their planting techniques. The youngest daughter followed in Jennifer's footsteps and became a business administrator, eventually taking full control of the family company. Mrs. Dorothy, who had been crucial in the early days of the story, became practically a grandmother to all the children, spending much of her time at the farm helping with the grandchildren Jennifer and Michael had given her. David Robert Thompson and Sarah Mitchell became close friends of the family, invited to all birthdays, graduations, and important celebrations. They always said that Jennifer's case had been one of the most rewarding of their careers, not for the money involved, but for the chance to help a genuinely good person reclaim her life. 20 years after that cold morning when Michael found Jennifer in the abandoned pigsty, they sat on the porch of their house, watching their grandchildren play in the same yard where Emily and Ryan had grown up. "Sometimes I still can't believe how our story began," commented Jennifer, watching a 4-year-old granddaughter chase a chicken across the yard. "I always knew we had found something special," replied Michael, holding her hand. "From the first day when you thanked me for believing in you, I knew you were different from anyone I had ever met. And you? Did you always know you loved me? I think I fell in love the moment I saw you interacting with Emily and Ryan for the first time. I saw how you looked at them, as if they were precious treasures, and I knew that any woman who could love my children like that was someone I could love forever." "And you did," laughed Jennifer. "Loved forever indeed." "I'm still loving," corrected Michael, "and I will keep loving until the last day of my life." At that moment, Emily appeared on the porch, carrying her youngest daughter, a baby of just 2 months. "Mom, Dad," she said, using the terms she had naturally adopted after the wedding, "can you look after little Mary for a few hours? Ryan and I want to take the older kids fishing at the lake." "Of course, my dear," replied Jennifer, holding out her arms to receive her granddaughter. "You all have fun." After Emily left, Michael and Jennifer watched the baby sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms. "You know what makes me happiest about our story?" said Jennifer. "What?" "That we managed to create a legacy that goes far beyond just the two of us. Look at our children, our grandchildren. They grew up in a family where love is more important than money, where honesty is more valuable than success, where helping others comes naturally." "That's true," agreed Michael, "and it all started with you needing help and me deciding to offer it." "Actually," said Jennifer with a mischievous smile, "it all started with Rebecca trying to destroy me and ending up bringing together 2 people who were meant to be together. So should we thank her?" "Never," laughed Jennifer, "but I can admit that, indirectly, she did us a favor." The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. In the yard, the chickens were settling into their coops, the family dogs were bedding down for the night, and a gentle breeze swayed the plants in the garden that Jennifer had cultivated with such care over the years. "Michael," Jennifer said suddenly. "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For believing in a dirty, frightened woman you found hiding in an abandoned pigsty, for risking your children's safety to protect a stranger, for giving me the chance to discover who I really was. "Thank you," he replied, "for teaching me that sometimes the best things in life appear when we least expect them, in the most unlikely places, in ways we never imagined." The little baby woke up and began to cry softly. Jennifer got up to warm her some milk, but before going into the house she turned to Michael one last time. "You know our story could have ended completely differently, right? If you had decided to turn me over to Rebecca that first day, if you hadn't believed my side of the story—" "But it didn't end differently," interrupted Michael. "It ended exactly as it was meant to end, with a united family, happy children, healthy grandchildren, and two people who love each other sharing a simple but full life." "You're right," smiled Jennifer. "And you know what? Even if I could go back in time and change something, I wouldn't change a thing. Not even the hard times, because they were necessary to bring us here." That evening, as the family gathered for another dinner on the porch, Michael looked around the table and felt immense gratitude. There were Emily and Ryan, now successful adults and caring parents. There was the youngest daughter, already a responsible young businesswoman. There were the grandchildren, noisy and joyful, filling the house with their laughter and mischief. And there was Jennifer, still as beautiful as the day he found her in the pigsty, but now radiating a happiness and peace that only came from someone who had found her true place in the world. During dinner, as everyone chatted animatedly about the day's events, plans for the weekend and news from school and work, Michael thought about how impressive the transformative power of true love was. A woman who had lost everything discovered she had actually gained everything. A man who thought he could never trust anyone again learned that true love was always worth the risk. Two children who had grown up with the fear of abandonment discovered that family wasn't just about blood, but about choice, commitment, and mutual care. "Dad," said Ryan during dessert, "do you remember that morning when you found Mom Jennifer in the pigsty?" "How could I forget?" replied Michael. "Sometimes I think about how different our lives would be if you had decided not to help her." "It would be very different," admitted Michael, "but I couldn't have made any other decision. When I saw her in that state, so scared and vulnerable, I had no choice. My heart simply wouldn't let me turn my back." "It was the best decision you ever made," said Emily, "not just for her, but for all of us." "Actually," Jennifer interjected, "the best decision he made was to keep believing in me when he had every reason to doubt. Even when he found out I was wealthy and could have been lying about everything. Even when he realized helping me could bring trouble for you all. He chose to trust. And you chose to stay with us even after regaining your freedom and your company," Ryan reminded her. "You could have gone back to your old life, but you chose a simpler life by our side." "It wasn't a simpler life," corrected Jennifer. "It was a truer life, and that's the difference." As the night wore on and the youngest grandchildren began to grow sleepy, the family gradually started to disperse. Emily and Ryan said their goodbyes, taking their children home. The youngest daughter went up to her room to study for an important test. Michael and Jennifer were left alone on the porch, as they had been every night for over 20 years, watching the stars and talking about everything and nothing. "You know what I realized today?" said Jennifer. "What?" "That our story has many more layers than I imagined when it all began. It wasn't just about a woman being pursued by an ambitious family. It wasn't just about a kind man who decided to help a stranger. It was about two wounded people who found healing in each other. It was about children who needed a mother and a woman who needed to be a mother. It was about turning pain into love, fear into trust, loneliness into togetherness, and about discovering that sometimes the best things come from the most desperate moments," added Michael. "Exactly. If Rebecca hadn't betrayed me, if I hadn't lost everything and needed to run, if I hadn't ended up in that abandoned pigsty, I would never have found you all. I would never have discovered what kind of life truly made me happy. And if Jessica hadn't left me alone with the children, if I hadn't been going through financial difficulties, if I hadn't been looking for firewood on that cold morning, I would never have heard your moans, and we would never have met. It's as if the universe conspired to bring us together." "Or maybe," said Michael with a smile, "it's just what happens when two good people find each other at the right times." Jennifer snuggled into Michael's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. There on that simple porch of a humble house that had become the center of her happiness, she felt richer than in all her previous life. "Michael," she murmured. "If you could give advice to other women going through what I went through, what would you say?" Michael thought for a moment. "I'd say that no matter how dark the situation seems, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. That sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what's truly worthwhile. That asking for help isn't a sign of weakness but of courage, and that true love can appear when we least expect it, in ways we never imagined." "Beautiful," said Jennifer. "And if you could give advice to men in the situation you were in that morning, I'd say it's worth listening to our conscience, even when it's easier to pretend we didn't see or hear someone else's suffering. That helping someone in need is never a waste of time or energy. That sometimes what seems like a problem can turn into the greatest blessing of our life. And that love can start with compassion," added Jennifer, "but it turns into something much deeper and truer when it's based on mutual respect, trust, and shared values." They remained silent for a few minutes, just enjoying each other's company and the peace of that moment. "Jennifer," Michael eventually said, "yes, I love you. I love you too. Today, tomorrow, and always." And so, 20 years after that unlikely meeting in an abandoned pigsty, two people who had met during the worst moments of their lives continued building together the best moments yet to come. The gentle night breeze swayed the window curtains, the stars shone in the clear country sky, and the distant sound of chickens settling on their roosts created the perfect soundtrack for another day in the life of a family that had learned that true love knows no social barriers, that happiness is priceless, and that sometimes the happiest endings begin in the most desperate moments. The next morning, as Jennifer prepared breakfast and Michael helped their oldest granddaughter with her homework, a reporter from a local newspaper called requesting an interview about the case of the businesswoman who became a farmer. "No, thank you," Jennifer replied politely. "Our story isn't about a businesswoman who became a farmer. It's about a woman who discovered where her true home was and decided to stay there for the rest of her life." And she hung up the phone, returning to her daily routine of caring for the people she loved, the plants she grew, the animals she raised, and the simple yet full life she had chosen to build. Because sometimes the best stories aren't about people who conquered the world, but about people who discovered that their world was right there, within reach, waiting only for them to have the courage to embrace it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. A few years later, when Michael and Jennifer were experienced grandparents and the farm had become a true family refuge, they received an unexpected visit. It was a Sunday afternoon, and the whole family was gathered for the traditional farm lunch when an unfamiliar car stopped at the gate. Out stepped a middle-aged woman whom Jennifer recognized immediately even after so many years. "Rebecca," she murmured to Michael. Jennifer's sister looked visibly aged, with graying hair and a tired expression. She walked slowly to the porch where the family was gathered. "Hi, Jennifer," she said timidly. The silence that followed was tense. Emily and Ryan, who were now adults but still vaguely remembered the story, instinctively positioned themselves protectively near their parents. The older grandchildren sensed the change in the atmosphere and stopped playing. "What do you want here, Rebecca?" asked Jennifer, keeping her voice controlled but firm. I wanted to apologize," said Rebecca, her voice trembling, "for what I did so many years ago, for the lies I told, for the suffering I caused." Michael watched Jennifer, waiting for her reaction. Throughout all those years together, they had rarely spoken about Rebecca, but he knew the wounds from that betrayal still hurt his wife. "Why now?" asked Jennifer. "After more than 20 years?" "Because," Rebecca paused, clearly struggling with emotion, "because Brandon passed away last month. During the last months of his life, while he was ill, we had time to talk about many things, about the choices we made, the mistakes we committed, and he made me promise that I would come here to ask for your forgiveness." "I'm sorry for your loss," said Jennifer, and Michael could tell she truly meant it. Even after everything Rebecca had done, his wife was still capable of compassion. "Thank you," murmured Rebecca. "Jennifer, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I know what we did was terrible, unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that not a day went by that I didn't think about the harm we caused you." "Sit here," said Jennifer, indicating a chair on the porch. Rebecca sat down hesitantly. Up close it became even clearer how hard the years had been on her. Her clothes were simple, her rough hands betrayed physical labor, and her eyes held a deep sadness. "What happened to you after you left here?" asked Jennifer. "We used the money we had to start a small business in Tennessee, a restaurant, but, well, we discovered we weren't as clever at entrepreneurship as we thought. The business went bankrupt in 2 years. After that, we worked regular jobs. Me as a secretary, Brandon as a mechanic. Did you have children?" "We couldn't. We tried for years, but maybe it was punishment for our sins." Emily, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, approached. "Can I ask a question?" she said to Rebecca. "Of course." "Why did you do that to my mother? She was always generous with the family, always shared everything she had." Rebecca began to cry silently. "Envy," she admitted. "Pure and simple envy. Jennifer was always the successful one, the smart one, the one who could make everything work out, and I was always the less favored sister. When our parents died and left the company to her, I felt wronged. I thought I deserved more recognition, more control." "But you had a good job, a comfortable life," Jennifer reminded her. "I did, but it wasn't enough for me. I wanted to be the leader, the owner, the person who made the decisions. And when I realized how easy it was to manipulate the situation, how people easily believed my insinuations about your behavior, it was as if a door opened to a dark side I didn't know existed in me." Michael, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "And do you regret it?" "Every single day for the last 20 years, Rebecca answered sincerely. "Especially when I found out through mutual acquaintances how happy you all were, how Jennifer had found a new family, how she was living a full and peaceful life. I realized that, in trying to destroy her happiness, I ended up destroying my own." "What do you want from us now?" asked Jennifer. "Nothing," Rebecca replied immediately. "I didn't come here to ask for money or favors or a second chance. I came only to ask for forgiveness. I wanted to look you in the eye and say that I know I was terrible, that I recognize the harm I caused, and that I am sorry, truly sorry." Jennifer was silent for a long moment, observing the sister she hadn't seen in over 2 decades. Michael knew his wife well enough to perceive the internal struggle she was fighting between justified hurt and her compassionate nature. "Rebecca," she said finally, "what you did to me was truly terrible. It almost destroyed me. If it weren't for Michael and the children, I don't know what would have become of me." "I know," murmured Rebecca. "But you know something. In the end, you did me a favor." Rebecca looked up, surprised. "How so?" "If you hadn't tried to have me committed, if I hadn't run away, if I hadn't ended up in that abandoned pigsty, I would never have found my true family. I would never have discovered what kind of life truly made me happy." Jennifer stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, looking at the backyard where some of her grandchildren were playing. "Look around, Rebecca. See this property, these children, this family. This is the life I built after you tried to destroy me, and it is infinitely richer and happier than anything I had before. Do you forgive me then?" asked Rebecca, her voice full of hope. "I forgive you," said Jennifer, sitting back down. "Not for your actions, but for my own peace. I've carried this hurt for far too long. It's time to let it go." Rebecca broke down in tears, clearly relieved. "Thank you," she managed to say between sobs. "Thank you for being more generous than I deserve." "Would you like to have lunch with us?" offered Jennifer, surprising the whole family. "No, I can't," replied Rebecca, drying her eyes. "I've already taken too much advantage of your kindness. I really just wanted to apologize." She got up to leave, but before going, she turned one last time. "Jennifer, can I say something?" "Go ahead." "You were always a better person than me, even when we were kids. Mom was right when she said you had a special heart. I'm sorry it took me so many years to recognize that." After Rebecca left, the family sat in silence for a few minutes, processing the unexpected encounter. "You did the right thing," said Michael, hugging Jennifer. "Forgiving doesn't mean you've forgotten what happened. It means you no longer want to carry the weight of the hurt." "Exactly," agreed Jennifer. "And you know what? Seeing Rebecca today, I realized how hard the years have been on her. The guilt, the remorse, the heavy conscience. She paid a high price for the mistakes she made." "Do you think the forgiveness was sincere?" asked Emily. "I think so. She had nothing to gain by coming here. Nothing to ask for, nothing to get. She came only to try to make peace with the past before it was too late." Ryan, who had heard the whole conversation, made an observation that surprised the adults. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story? It's not just that Mom managed to forgive, but that she managed to turn a betrayal into a blessing. How many people can do that?" "That's true," agreed the youngest daughter. "If we stop to think, we should even thank Aunt Rebecca. If it weren't for her, our parents would never have met. We would never have been born. This family would never have existed." Jennifer smiled. "That's an interesting way of looking at things. Perhaps we shouldn't thank people for their bad acts, but we can be grateful for the way God turned those acts into blessings." That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, Michael found Jennifer on the porch looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About the strangeness of life," she replied. "How people who hurt us deeply can, without meaning to, steer us toward the happiest moments of our existence. You really don't hold any more hurt toward Rebecca?" "I don't. And you know why? Because I finally understood that holding on to hurt is like holding a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone. The one who gets burned is yourself." "You are an amazing woman," said Michael, embracing her. "After everything we've been through together, I can still be surprised by your capacity to forgive and to find the good side of situations." "I learned that from you," replied Jennifer. "On that first day, when you found me in that pigsty, you could have turned your back. You could have handed me over to my family. You could have decided it wasn't worth the risk. But you chose to trust, you chose to help, you chose to believe. You taught me that there is always a choice between feeding fear or feeding love. And you taught me that true love has nothing to do with social position or bank account. It has to do with loyalty, with companionship, with building something together day after day." They stayed embraced, watching the sleeping farm around them. The chickens slept peacefully in their coops. The dogs rested on the porch. The vegetable garden grew silently under the starlight. "Michael," said Jennifer softly. "Yes?" "Thank you for saving me that day." "Jennifer," he replied, "thank you for letting me save you. And for saving me too." And so, 25 years after that unexpected meeting in an abandoned pigsty, two people who had met during the worst moments of their lives continued to discover that true love not only survives life's storms, but becomes even stronger because of them. Rebecca's visit had been a reminder that the past never completely disappears, but also a confirmation that when we choose forgiveness and gratitude, we can transform even the worst experiences into steps toward a fuller and happier life. That night, Jennifer slept with a smile on her lips, knowing she had finally healed all the wounds of the past. And Michael slept, knowing that his decision to help a stranger so many years ago had resulted not only in her salvation, but in the creation of a beautiful, close-knit family that would continue to spread love and kindness for many future generations. Because sometimes, the most beautiful endings are not just about living happily ever after, but about learning to turn pain into love, fear into courage, and loneliness into a family bond that lasts forever. End of story. So, dear listener, what did you think of this story of overcoming and true love? Were you moved by Jennifer and Michael's journey? Leave a comment telling us which part touched you the most, and whether you believe forgiveness truly frees our soul. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one.